Today on the show, we stay on program. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and themes behind some of our favorite universes. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Jaden.
And today we're going to be talking about episode 9 of ANDOR. This episode was...
We're getting close to the end.
Oh, this episode was a blast. I had so much fun.
The ending of... We're going to get into it, but the ending of this episode literally made me jump out of my chair. I was like, let's go!
It was great. I had just excitement throughout the entire episode, but that ending, whoo boy.
I know that we still have 3 episodes to go, but I'm ready to call it at this point. This might be some of the best Star Wars ever.
Oh, I've been calling it since like episode 5. Like, let's go.
It's been the heist episodes really. I was like, this is some epic storytelling right here.
But first, we're gonna do a little bit of housekeeping. We love hearing from all you guys, our listeners. So email us at podcast@loreparty.com with your thoughts, questions, and episode ideas. And you know what? Maybe you'll hear them in a future episode.
Absolutely. And you can find Kevin at In The Loop on Twitter, as long as Twitter still exists, and K-Loops on Twitch and Instagram.
I am not verified.
We're too poor for the $8 a month.
You can find Jaden not verified at Mr. Jad J on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, you can connect with the Lore Party team, also not verified, on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at lore_party. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. All right, now before we dive in, if you guys have not watched any of the episodes, especially, the last episode 9, don't listen to this. Just pause it and go watch all that stuff. Come back, listen to our other episodes, and take a break. Don't worry about it. It's okay. You can come back.
You have been warned. All right, let's get into it. We begin where we left off. Daedra and Bix are at the hotel, and Daedra begins her interrogation, saying that she knows about Luthen. She doesn't really know the name yet, but she's just like, she knows of him. And she was able to get some information, but not everything she wants. So she's starting with Bix. And when Bix says, she's like, "Hey Bix, let's have a powwow here. Just tell me what I want to know, and then you get to go free." And Bix is completely aware of her situation. She goes, "You wouldn't believe me even if I told you, would you?" And she goes, No, I wouldn't." Which I was like, damn, that sucks.
This is the first scene where I think the disgustingness of fascism really shows in Daedra. So like the lighting, the way her face like is lit, the way her uniform is like really, really fitted, and just like overall, even her facial expressions, like she looks not cool anymore. Like she doesn't look nice.
The way that they've like designed, like the lighting in the room is harsher to like make her features stand out more. Yeah. Like the general like just tone of her voice just shows the power that she's projecting over this person, and just the casual way that she mentions Dr. Gorst, who is in the room. This man who is a ISB Imperial interrogator. And this dude is a bad-looking dude.
Yeah, and the thing is, all of the people from the Empire, they look very washed out. They look exhausted. They look, you can see the circles under their eyes. They look as kind of what, the cartoon versions of these Empire people look like. So I thought that was really cool because they made it look like, I felt like I was watching Clone Wars almost.
Almost.
So after we see Dr. Gorst turn around, we then cut to Cassian and his team, and they're at it again, building giant cog things. And the older guy on their team, Olaf, begins to notice that his hand is not working properly. He keeps staring at it and rubbing it. And Cassian notices it. And everybody's starting to notice it. But Cassian looks at him and says, let's switch. Kino comes over. And there's a little bit of an argument between the team, but Cassian's like, no, I'm faster. Like, I got it. Don't worry about it. So they switch, and Kino comes over and asks, what's going on here?
I gotta say this, though. I think it's so funny that there's one guy whose job is just, like, keep track of how every other table is doing, and they didn't immediately put him on that job. That was so weird to me.
Yeah.
Just have him stare at the screen.
So then Kino asks Olaf, how many days, do you have left? And Olaf says he has 41. He is the next man out. He is the one who's going to leave. When asked whose idea it was to switch them, Cassian instantly says, oh, it's Taga's idea. And he was the one who was already kind of arguing. And Cassian is trying to help everyone out, it looks like, or at least use his charm or trying to convince people to trust him.
Yeah, because Kino's not mad about the swap. No. He's like, hey, that was a great idea.
Yeah.
Like, that's whose idea was this? That's amazing.
Yeah. And when Cassian asks about a new person coming, Kino just kind of stares at him and shakes his head in an annoyance and just looks at him dead face and just says, you know the drill.
Yep. Like, at this point, Cassian's been in there for at least 30 days, so he should know how the system works. There's not a lot of rules I keep going to call the prison the box for some reason, but that's not what it is. I wish they had like a cool prison-y name for it, but it's just floor 4. So anyways, we cut back to Bix and Dr. Gorst, and he explains how he's going to torture her. Which, I said he was a bad-looking dude, but it's not like, like grizzled guy with like tattoos and scars. He just looks like a doctor, but like evil.
He reminds me of the guy from the Halo series, the one that we all hated, who was like super creepy.
Oh! Yeah, just like this creepy little man who's like, because he keeps talking about like what he's gonna do to her, and it's like it's such a clinical description of what he's about to do to her.
Yeah,
he puts this device on her head that's gonna play the sound that an alien race screamed before they died on their planet. When the Empire came in, they eradicated the species, and they found out afterwards, like the soldiers who had killed them were like all huddled in a pile, just begging for death because of how horrible the sound was. And of course, the Empire goes immediately, wow, that's interesting. How do we weaponize that?
Yeah, they found apparently these soldiers that had killed a couple of them, and they were huddled up in like a corner, like all fucking comatose and messed up. The species, they were going to build like a mine or something on their planet, and the species didn't like it, so they tried to fight back and just got fucking decimated and eradicated.
Yep. Like this, and Dr. Gorst, he doesn't care about that part. He just cares about what these sounds can do. And the one thing he says, he's talking about like, oh, we changed like the pitch and the frequency to like make it more effective. And he said the best part is we found a way to like make it work best with children's screams. Apparently children's screams like amplifies the effects. And I'm like, good God, this person's a monster.
Guy's fucking nuts.
Now I'm going to say this right now. This was the best shot scene in the show to date. Yeah. Because they put the device on her head, and as they do that, all the sound in the shot disappears except for her breathing. And it gets a real tight close-up on her face, and then suddenly she just screams her head off. We don't hear the scream of the aliens, which I thought was like an amazing touch. Yep. Because everything's always worse in your head. You can only imagine what would make her sound like that. What dying alien children's screams sound like in someone's head. And then the doors shut, and then we see footsteps walking away, which is literally a recreation shot from A New Hope. Literally shot for shot recreation when Leia's being tortured. I was like, that's such a cool callback.
We hear these screams, and after that door shuts, all of a sudden the screams kind of mesh into machine noises, and we go back to Cassian. Cassian just kind of looks up and decides that he's got to go to the bathroom. Not to pee, though, but to plan. He breaks a
Yes.
panel off. It was really funny is before he breaks the panel off, he flips open the toilet seat and then slams it back down, which I thought was really funny. Like, oh, I got to make everybody think I'm going. And then, so he breaks his panel off.
Well, actually, I thought about this. I'm wondering if there's a sensor in the toilet to see if, like, he runs around the corner to see if it, like, triggers, like, oh, hey, this guy actually went to use the bathroom.
Yeah. He breaks this panel off on the wall. And there's all these, cables and tubes and stuff. He gets this weird cutter that he's been hiding back there and starts cutting at the pipe. He's like sawing at it. Before he gets very far, though, the alarm sounds and a new prisoner is being brought onto the floor. As the new man is being lowered onto the floor, Andor talks through his idea to escape. And I believe this prisoner that he's talking to was a prisoner that he entered with as well. He was, I think, the guy who was he was sitting right across from him when he was on the ship that was bringing him to the planet. But the two of them were like kind of looking at each other and they're like discussing, whispering what they're going to do, like their plan. And they're saying like, okay, look at this. The elevator is not rigged. If we could get the elevator to stop, we can jump on the elevator and fight back. Like we won't get affected by the floor.
They're like, we need to, if we can get one of those weapons, they're not going to be able to stop us if we manage to get our hands on some weapons. The elevator in the cage itself is not electrified. We cut back to Daedra going into the interrogation room as Bix is being, like, I guess, released, for lack of a better term, from the helmet. And she looks broken. She looks absolutely destroyed. And Daedra's like, all right, now we can begin our interrogation.
Which is nuts because, like, let me just prepare you for interrogation. Yeah. Like, fuck, ugh.
The interrogation hasn't started yet. That was just the torture.
Yeah, first it's just the torture. Next we're going to interrogate. So right after this quick scene, we go to the prison again, and the prison team is working, but Olaf just seems to be slowing down a bit, but he is very determined to work.
Everyone seems to notice, again, they notice, like, hey, what's going on with him? But he's determined. He's like, no, I want to win. We're close to winning, right?
Well, that's the thing is he was asking questions, and they answer him, like, where are we in the running? And he says like, oh, what the hell? And they say like, hey man, you asked this already. Like they're noticing cognitive issues as well as motor issues. So they're kind of just like keeping an eye on him and they definitely look concerned.
He's an old man. Well, he's an old man.
Yeah, and they definitely look concerned. I don't think they look concerned for, their team.
I think it's more of like that's because these guys, they're this unit is designed to be family units.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are supposed to work together as a team, and they're noticing like their guy who's closest to getting out is faltering. He's just falling, not falling apart. That happens a little later, but like he's just like they're like, what the fuck? You asked that already, man. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like we're ahead because that was the other thing too is that they're ahead. They were winning that day, and he just kept being like, so we're winning. It's like what do you? Yes, you asked that already. Which, by the way, hats off to Andor, planning an escape and getting his team to first place.
Hey,
good for him.
Priorities.
Yeah, absolutely. So we cut back to Daedra. Again, these were very quick juxtapositions. And Daedra is just, she's finished with Bix. She's leaving. But she tells the prefect to keep her alive. Because she's like, Andor might try to make contact with her. I need her alive to set a trap. And then the prefect is like, what about Pack? I would love to hang him. And she's like, yeah, I don't care. I don't give a shit. That guy's nothing to me.
After that, we go to Mon Mothma, and she's giving a speech at the Senate. But it seems that all of her words are just falling on deaf ears. She gets back.
She's doing her typical, like, rabble, hey, the Empire's being bad at this. And, like, literally senators are turning off their monitors and going home, like, in the middle of her talking.
They don't care. They're like, whatever, lady. Keep going. We don't care. Obviously discouraged. She gets back into her speeder, and her driver informs her that her cousin is in town and is, I think, at the house.
Yes. Which Mothma seems confused and concerned about, not like happy.
Ah, yes.
Interesting. In the meantime, we cut back to Cassian and his crew. They finished their shift and they're waiting for the floor change. The shift change, if you will. And the one guy is sign languaging to the other floors, right? But it's more frantic than it was the first time we saw him do this. And they all of a sudden they keep they're like, what's going on? What's going on? And all of a sudden they keep saying something happening on 2. Floor 2, something's going on over there. And Kino is doing his usual job. You know, he's like, hey guys, stop worrying about it. Don't worry about 2. We're going to keep going. But they've been waiting in line for a while now to change shifts. They've noticed. They're like, this is taking too long. And he goes, they're probably just doing a head count. Kino's like, they're probably just doing a head count. Everything's fine. And then all of a sudden the lights flicker. The lights just start flickering. And then they're immediately told to stand on program. And clearly something is going on. They're all super concerned, but they just don't know what it is or what's going on because there's no information coming in. So they just move forward.
After that, we get to meet Mon Mothma's cousin. But it's someone we've met before. It's Vel.
We have? No.
Yeah, the two of them talk about their shared roles in the rebellion, and Mon Mothma says, she's very concerned. And obviously, this is the rich family that she's trying to escape, Vel. That's what we mentioned in the last episode. But, Vel is, apparently like the Paris Hilton of the family.
Vel Mothma, I guess?
She gave Mon Mothma's daughter like a dress and all this stuff, and she's literally like what I mean by like Paris Hilton, like she is the rich girl who likes to party. That's her persona.
Yep,
that's
the persona that she's given.
That's her whole,
Because like the dress, when she gives it to to Mon Mothma's daughter, she's like, ooh, I don't know if your father will let you wear that because it's so scandalous. And she was like, well, my dad lets me wear whatever I want. Which again, kudos to that dad for being just the fucking worst and turning his own daughter against her own mother. So we cut to the prison crew. They're resting after their shift, and Andor, he's eating, but in between bites, he's asking Kino about what he knows about the layout of the prison. Because Kino obviously knows more because he's not only the manager, but he's also only got like 200 plus, or I think it's like 100 and some days left.
Yeah, it's like it's under a year. It's like 200 something 200. It's like 200 something days.
I think it was like 211 when Andor went in. I think it's like 180 now.
No, it's at 200 something like now. So he was almost out. If you think about it,
that's right.
Both
yeah.
Olaf he would have been out by now. And I say out in air quotes, and Kino
we'll get to that in a second.
Very close to getting out.
Yep. And Kino's whole thing, he's like, I'm just going to, keep my head down, get my work done, pay my debt to society, and I'm going to get out. But Andor's like, hey man, listen, you're going to be out soon. I got 6 years left. I ain't sticking around for this. So just tell me what you know. What's the harm? Specifically, he asks him like, how many guards are there on each floor? Come on, you have to know that. And I love Kino because he just responds by turning his back to him and turning his light off. Just giving him the silent treatment.
He refuses to tell him anything.
Yep.
So back at the ISB, they're talking about the debrief, right? They're looking into what happened, what Deirdre has found and everything. And they're believing that, finding Andor might be the key to finding Axis.
Yeah, they started to piece together the parts of the. They were like, well, he showed up back on Ferrix like 3 days after the Aldani heist, and he had money from the Aldani heist on him,
and he was clean shaven.
That was a big deal because they were like, hey, everybody at the Aldani heist was clean shaven. So was Andor.
And they said that the photo of Andor that they showed those that survived. They were like, yeah, that guy looks really fucking familiar.
Yep. So the pieces are falling into place, and clearly Andor is someone that they need to be looking out for. So the next morning, the day shift of the prison, they line up for the head count, and the other shift is like, hey, did you guys hear what happened on 2? And they're like, no, what happened on 2? Like, oh my God, they don't know. It turns out that light flickering was the entire shift being murdered on floor 2. They're all fried.
And they were doing the sign language thing, trying to figure out from other floors too. And he turns around, Kino turns around and starts yelling. He's like, saying how you don't know how long does it take for all this shit to happen, all these communications to come back and forth between different floors. And he's like getting pissed. And then they get told to go on program. And Melshi is like, we're never getting the fuck out of here. And Kino loses it and turns around and starts like beating the shit out of him. And Cassian grabs him and throws him over and is like, hey, the less they think we know, the better. Stop.
The better.
He's like, stop. And so they get on program and Kino is like, hey, Kino yells at the whole entire tube of people and says, it might be the truth and it might be a rumor. We don't know. Do not say anything. Don't even acknowledge it.
Yep.
And, they got to play it cool. And now we go to, of course, my favorite wacko, Karn, who's eating his green Cocoa Puffs again.
Apparently, it's all he ever freaking eats.
And his mom comes in and she's grilling him, he's getting up late or getting up early, coming home late.
His hair's been trimmed.
Every little fucking thing she's commenting about. And he's like, hey, you've been in my room. You've been inside my private box, which I thought was interesting that he calls it that. And definitely shows that he has, no privacy, and his private box area, aside from his mind, is very precious to him because he's never had privacy and everything of his life has been regimented and, been controlled. So it's the one space he has control over, but she's been in it because she goes, I like a tidy house and stuff. And she's grilling him. And then finally he goes, we're not talking about that. You were in my private space. I know how, that you were doing that.
I have my ways.
And she ends up just kind of saying, what do I get on like my investment? I got you a job and all that. What do I have to show for it? And he says, well, I got a promotion. And she's like, oh my God, yay. She's like excited, but like she's not like mom excited. She's like, good job on, getting, higher up.
Making the family proud. Uncle Harlow will be thrilled.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't you be thrilled? Your son just told you he got a promotion after only working there for like a month.
She's not happy for him. She's happy.
Happy for the family.
Yeah, and just for herself almost, if anything.
Yep.
She offers him more cereal, and one of the little, Cocoa Puff things fall out, and he looks at it and picks it up and drops it into his bowl.
After this, we cut back to Andor and the team still working to win the shift, and Olaf is slowing down again. This time, he doesn't seem to be able to focus on anything, and it's just really sad to watch him degrade as the episode goes on.
It's very sad, actually.
Yeah.
We're then treated to an awkward family dinner at Mon Mothma's house, where Mothma's husband is grilling Vel about why she doesn't have a husband yet. And he's like, you should get a widower by now. That's about all you're going to be able to get. And she's like, it's not on my agenda.
I guess they marry early on Chandrila because he's talking, like, previous episode, they're like, oh yeah, we got married at 16, as is tradition. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
I know. And he's just giving her shit, and Vel's just like, yeah, bro, I don't give a fuck. Like, fuck you. But Vel says this really funny thing where she's like, oh, it wasn't on my list. All the good ones are taken, I guess. And she's like trying to dig at him while also like complimenting him. And Mon Mothma just kind of giggles. And then they mention about like old boyfriends, and her daughter's like, oh yeah, mom's old boyfriend's coming around. And Mon Mothma's like, what the fuck? What? And she's like, we went to grade school.
Yeah.
And he goes, keyword old. And I'm like, whoa. You're saying your wife's old? Like, what the fuck, bro? Guy's a dick.
He does not. He's such a jerk. He's like, just. He's such a great character because he's probably going to turn her into the Empire at some point.
Oh, totally.
Like, I bet. Like, he's just such a. Unless they pull a 360 on us and it's like, no, turns out he likes her, but he's just like, he doesn't know how to talk to her anymore.
I think he's just a fucking prick.
I think he's just a prick.
After dinner, Vel and Mon decide to have a little conversation and just about like, what are you doing? What's the plan? And little thing.
It's more of like, hey, just be careful.
Yeah.
They're both commiserating about like their roles in the rebellion. You know, like they're both kind of trapped in the personas that they've created for themselves, and that they just both need to watch out because things are about to get more aggressive. Speaking of aggressive things, we cut to Daedra the next day going to work, and out of nowhere she's stopped by Karn, who we find out has been waiting outside of her office to try to catch her for like days. Like, he shows up early before work to like wait for her so that he can talk, so he can try to talk to her. And originally he says it's just because of he wants to thank her for the promotion. And she's like, I have nothing to do with that.
She's like, we gave you a clean bill of health.
Yeah. And she tries to like pull away, but he like grabs her like really aggressively.
She even asks, she's like, are you stalking me?
Yeah. And he doesn't deny it either. It's so fucking weird, man. She threatens to have him arrested, but he's continuing to say like he feels like it was so weird because it was like it wasn't a confession of like love or anything. It was like this weird like confession of like love for duty, and it was like it sounded like, dude, you do so good at your job, it makes me horny. It's like, Jesus Christ, it's the most awkward fucking thing I've ever seen. And there's people like, there's been this big debate online of like whether or not she was into it or not. And I'm like, I don't know where I stand because she's an extremely dislikable person as well. So I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, maybe she was like just a little bit being like, oh, it's nice to be seen as, good at my job. But on the other hand, this dude fucking ambushed her.
I was deeply uncomfortable the entire time. I'm just gonna let that be known.
Nazi flirting is never fun to watch.
It was gross. And then when she gets to her office, she's like talking to her assistant, and she's like even looks uncomfortable. I am not in the realm of saying that I think she was, flirting. No, she was fucking like, hey, yo, chill out there.
She definitely wasn't flirting back, to be sure.
Yeah.
But I think there was like the conversation of like, well, how much did she hate it, and how much was she like,
No, I don't subscribe. I'm sorry, folks. I don't subscribe to that. Look, if I'm wrong, whatever.
You know what? I wish both of them years of unhappiness.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like that moment where you're like, oh, I feel bad this is happening to her, but she is a Nazi.
So after this, she is in her office, and Deirdre is talking to her assistant, and her assistant excitedly tells her that they captured a rebel pilot who is also a pilot for the team that Luthen was trying to get Saw Gerrera to start a raid with. So this is everything is coming together.
Yep.
So she begins to interrogate off-screen this pilot remotely.
Yep. Like they sent Dr. Gorst to go stick the alien screamy probe on his head, and then she'll ask him the questions via Skype, I guess. Meanwhile, Teokoma meets with Mon Mothma, and he tells her like, hey, that money that you moved, yeah, that's way too much to hide. And she's like, oh God, what do we do then? What's the best thing we can do? And he goes, hey, the best thing we can do right now is to have someone put the money back. And she's like, well, who could do that? And he goes, you're not going to like this. It's not a very long list. She's like, just tell me who it is. And he drops the name Davo Skolden, which they might have named, like, I was laughing because the name even sounds scummy.
Yeah. And she's not happy about it.
Oh, she's pissed. Like, she's like, this dude's a fucking gangster. And he's like, yeah, well, you're a rebel. What do you want from me? She's like, he wants to meet with you. And she's like, do I have any other choice? She's like, not really. It's like, all right, let's do it.
It's almost like she is equivalency of like working with like the Hutts, but like, the equivalent of the Hutts for her home planet.
Well, but I was gonna say, he's a guy from Chandrilla. How bad could he be?
I mean, her husband's pretty bad.
Yeah, but like if that's the measure, I'm like, this guy must be like he cheated on his taxes. Like Mon Mothma I will say this, like compared to someone like Saw Gerrera, she is a goody two shoes.
Oh, absolutely.
She's the more noble rebellion that we've known growing up with Star Wars. Like, so she's like, he's a scumbag. So I'm imagining like his crimes are like, tax evasion and smuggling. And she's like, oh. But, hey, that might lead to her, like, growing and realizing that she has to work with people like him in order to get the rebellion to go. So this might be a learning experience for her.
Yeah.
Because the entire time that we've known her, she's been trying to get the rebellion, like, going through legitimate means. That's why she was so pissed when Luthen stole all that money.
Yeah.
Because it was a crime.
Yeah.
And people were going to suffer because of it.
Well, that's the thing. Luthen is, doing everything in his own way, or at least the way of the Empire, and she's like really does not want to stoop to that level, but he's like, fuck it. They don't care.
He's like, yeah, exactly.
So speaking of those who don't care, we go back to the ISB, and Dedra is informing the director of good news. The pilot that they captured didn't get a chance to signal out. And then they go about preparing a trap for all of this pilot's friends. And they are coming up with this idea where they're going to kill him. They're going to freeze this pilot. Yep. And they're going to let the ship go out into space.
With a tracker on it so they can find where the base is. Which I was like, damn, that's fucking cold, literally.
Well, that's the thing. The pilot's just another tool.
This guy will lead us to a major rebel cell, which, by the way, they already have information that these guys were planning.
Yeah, they already knew about the raid that Luthen was trying to get Saw Gerrera to go. And that's the thing, too, is they don't see any of these rebels or any of these people that could be involved as people, as individuals. They are just like other parts of the machine. They are like, whatever, you're disposable. Everybody's disposable.
It's our job to catch the cells, so we'll use you the best way we can. So we cut back to the prisoners, and the program ends, and we get to see what happens to a team when they lose. They have to go step into the middle of the room where everyone can see them, and they all get zapped by the machine that drops them all to the ground. And it's kind of brutal to watch them all do this because everybody has to stare at them and watch them. It's kind of hard to be happy that you finished a shift when you watch your buddies get fried. Suddenly, though, Olaf, who hasn't been looking great the whole episode, he, collapses. He can't even stand upright when they get him into line to do the head count. And Andor's like, Kino, we have to get this guy a medic. We have to get him help.
So then they start doing a shift change, and they're carrying him. Cassian and Melshi are carrying him, and he looks like shit. Like, he looks like he's got COVID. It's terrible.
Yep.
And he collapses even more, and Kino's freaking out. Like, you gotta get on program. What are you doing? Keep moving. Everybody keep moving. And finally, they're like, we need a medic. We've been saying it now. We need a medic. And so they finally get a medic.
Yep.
And everybody leaves except for Cassian and Kino. And the medic is looking at Olaf. He says, what's going on with this inmate? What has been happening? And Cassian's like, his name is Olaf. And the medic goes, I don't want to know his name. And that kind of, you could see in Kino's eyes where he's like, this is an individual, this is a person. Even though Kino is the leader of something where they're all cogs in the machine kind of situation, he still sees them as individuals. He knows every single person.
He still has his humanity.
Yeah, he sees everybody. He knows their names. He knows who they are. And he checks in with them. Even though in the beginning when he tells Cassian, like, if you got a problem, like, I don't want to hear it, keep it to yourself, he still is aware of what's going on for everybody. He knows their stories. And so he looks and is like, this guy's got 41 days, like, he's about to leave. And the doctor's like, no, he's not. He's had a massive stroke. This guy's, he's done for. He goes to put him down.
The medic says to Kino, no one's getting out.
Yeah.
And then he picks up the syringe, and Kino picks up on that. He goes, What do you mean nobody's getting out? We're all getting out. Like, that's our thing. We get out when we get our shift done. And the medic's like, I don't want to talk about this. He's like, no, what happened? What's going on? What do you mean by that? And so then the medic, he calls for the guard. He's like, hey, I need a body bag cart here.
The guard yells at him and is like, yeah, it's on its way. Gets this syringe and he goes to, inject Olaf. And Kino goes, what are you doing? And he says, I'm going to help him, move on, basically. He's not going to feel anything. Just, he's just going to pass. And he injects him, and Kino looks very upset. by this. Kino's already upset in general, but the killing of Olaf, the passing of Olaf, definitely gets Kino going. He looks upset because now he's lost, obviously, somebody on his floor, but he clearly he kind of cares about the guys on his floor, and Olaf just kind of like breathes in and then just dies.
Yeah, and then that immediately sets into Kino's head. He asks again, "What did you mean by none of us are getting out? What happened on floor 2?" And the medic looks at him and just goes, "Listen, this is the craziest part of the episode. We this is the one that I think I immediately texted you when I saw this. So the reason what happened on floor 2 was a guy on floor, was it 4 or 5?
I think it's 4.
Yeah, a guy on floor 4 was recycled. He was supposed to get out. He served his sentence and was supposed to be leaving the facility, but a clerical error instead put him on floor 2.
But now, was it a clerical error?
That's the question. That's the question, because this was the first guy to get out in the new system. So he basically was just shuffled. Instead of getting released, he was shuffled. And when floor 2 realized that, they all rioted and they were all killed. When Kino hears this, there's like an instant change on his face. The guard's like, "Hey, get the fuck out of here. We got to clean up this body." So they both immediately turn to leave. And he stands up and immediately starts walking towards the cell block. And Andor follows him. All of a sudden, Cassian just asks again, "How many guards per level?" And without a second thought, Kino says, "No more than 12. And it cuts to black.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back. Trust us, this even sounds cool in the podcast. We get it. The ending's really cool. We will be right back. All right, so with an ending like that, I have some thoughts. I figured you had some thoughts.
Oh my God. I was literally jumped out of my chair. I was like, let's go. This is awesome.
Yeah, I think the ending was one of the best hardcore ending, like not even a cliffhanger, but just like a badass ending. I thought it was great. And it's just a line. Somebody just says a line and it's the most badass thing.
I mean, it was incredible.
So when it comes to this episode, my thought process was throughout the episode, it kind of looks like Kino is being coached in his leadership by Cassian.
A little bit. He seems to be having an effect on him.
Yeah, he's been a leader here now for like quite some time, but when things go off program, he's not sure what to do, right? So like with what's going on with Olaf, what's been going on with floor 2 and all that, he's a little off. Thinking on his feet at this time isn't his forte, where it's Cassian's specialty, because even with the floor 2 stuff, Cassian is like, "Hey, calm down. They don't need to know they don't need to know that we know," and all this other shit. So like he's kind of coaching him, and it's definitely having an effect. I also think the contrast to Karn and Cassian's upbringing, like we just keep seeing it. It's really intriguing to me because Karn's mom sees Karn as an investment, right? She even says it out loud. He's a tool, where Cassian was loved, and I mean like really loved. So I found that to be really interesting.
She, like Marva even says that. She's like, "I've never loved anything more than I loved you." Karn's not even Karn is her flesh and blood, whereas Marva adopted him.
Overall, we still see the prison theme. Obviously, we're seeing the prison, but the prison theme, Mon Mothma still feeling like she is stuck.
She's trapped in her spot. Karn feels he's trapped in his spot. Andor is literally trapped in his spot.
I mean, even Vel is trapped in a persona, but I feel like she's able to kind of like escape.
She's breaking free, and honestly, you can see how her demeanor is different than everyone else's, because she has broken free from her persona. She has a way to escape.
Things that I also liked, I loved the lighting of this. I think the lighting for the prison being very bright, and they're washed out, but in a different way, and just the contrast for lighting for people on Coruscant and everything. Like I think cinematically they did a really good job of distincting each area.
Yep.
Finding out about Vel, that was cool. My only notes, I think, is with the anxiety stuff, I'm all for having like ticking clocks or like a weird sound going off to heighten the anxiety. And there were at some points where I was expecting it and I was like, oh, that would be really awesome. Because for those listening, we watch the episode multiple times. We watch it first just for fun, and then we watch it a couple more times and we like to analyze it. And I just noticed, there were some points where I was like, there should have been a little bit more of a sound for heightened anxiety here. It was just dead silent, and it didn't really feel anxiety-inducing. It just almost sometimes felt awkward. But overall, I think the silence is good in certain ways, which they did do very well. Yeah, I think overall, good episode.
Yep. I echo everything you're saying there. I think this, God, the hype for this episode at the end, I was like, the possibilities are endless for what they can do with not only the prison scene, but then the other characters too. I can't wait to find out who this gangster of Chandrilla is and what he does. I guarantee it's like, oh, he does exotic animal smuggling, and you're like, oh no, it's like, no, he gives out house pets. It's like, oh, what? Okay, Mon Mothma, you scaredy cat, be all right for once. I think we need to jump into some quotes now, though.
Yes, they're not that many in this episode, but they're fine.
No.
So the first one is the scene with Bix and Deirdre. Deirdre is looking at her and says, "The very worst thing you can do right now is bore me." And Bix says, "You're not going to believe me anyway, are you?" Deirdre says, "No, I suppose not." And that just shows to me, like, doesn't fucking matter if she tells the truth or not.
Nope.
They kind of almost want to torture. They enjoy it.
Yep. It's the power trip that they get from it. It turns out, like, when Deirdre was, first couple of episodes, so she was pretending that, she was different than the other Imperials. She's the exact same person. She's gotten hold of power, and now she's abusing it.
Yeah. Yeah. She has become what she actually was kind of fighting against with her supervisors.
Yep. Then she says to the prefect, she says, keep her here and keep her alive. As a hostage? As a witness.
And that I thought was interesting. Was like, what are we keeping her as distinctionarily, on paper? Because it depends for them. I found that to be very interesting. How do you treat them? Do you treat them any differently? No, not really.
Yeah. The prefect says to her, "I'd like to hang Pack, what's left of him anyway, make sure they know who's in charge. They are still trying to assert their power on Ferrix." And that's because we've seen this is a hotbed of rebel activity. This place does not submit to authority very easily.
Yep. As well as that is one of those things we've been talking about in all these episodes is how the Empire uses fear. They use fear and intimidation, but also we have seen it backfire on them internally as well. So I thought that was really interesting. The next one is Vel talking to Mon Mothma. Vel says to Mon, "The Empire doesn't rest, Mon. The rebellion comes first." And then she says, "Things are happening. There's risk. There's no other way." And I thought that was really cool because she's showing Mon like, hey, man, you're living in your Magic the Gathering Neon Dynasty apartment and you don't know. Like, I'm out there. And I think it shows that difference where Mon just still doesn't get it. She's still, like you said earlier, she's still this rich goody two-shoes person. And she's just hasn't been there and she just doesn't know it.
The next one that we need to talk about is Andor's quote to Kino. When he's asking him how many guards are on the level the first time in the episode. And he says, "You think they care what we say? You think they're listening? You think they care enough to make an effort?" See, this line is very interesting because not only is it a great line, but it's a direct parallel to what Andor says to Jyn Erso right before their death in Rogue One, when they send the plans up into space. He says, "Do you think anyone up there is listening?" And I love that idea. It's like, he knows that his side is the one that listens.
And when Kino kind of gives him shit and is like, we're going to bed, like, whatever. He then says, we are nothing to them. Melshi's right. We are cheaper than droids and easier to replace. You think they care what we say? Nobody is listening. Nobody. And he just keeps screaming, nobody is listening. Nobody is listening, as they turn the lights off everywhere. And that was a really cool scene because he's showing, if anything, he, of all people, know that they don't listen. That he's infiltrated them.
Cassian earns his living by breaking into places.
Exactly. But Kino says to him, what would you know about what the Empire is doing, like how they work? And obviously Cassian can't say that, but Cassian's like, nobody's listening. Like, trust me, they see us as lesser. They're not worried about us. Like, they really aren't.
Well, and that's the thing. I think Cassian, if he was able to tell everybody what he has done in the past, they'd be able to, he could convince them to listen.
Yeah.
However, he's also the reason why a lot of them got trapped for another year or more, and they'd probably kill him. So he's not saying shit.
He even says, he's like, all they need to do is just turn a floor on twice a day, and that's it. Like, they don't have to do anything, and they know it. So, yeah.
I mean, and it's like literally like you see the guards are so bored. When Cassie was getting put in there, they were all like, oh my God, like the worst part of their day is when they have to add a new person to the floor.
And they're always late, too.
Yeah, they're sloppy. This is not a well-run facility. It looks well-run because it's clean, but that's because of the droids doing the maintenance.
So the last quote is, of course, we've said it already, no more than 12. So fucking badass. Andy Serkis is so awesome.
I cannot wait for the next episode. The first question that I have is, how are they getting out?
Yeah, I would love to know that.
Because like this prison seems pretty impregnable, so I'm wondering what they're gonna do to get out. I'm really excited to see what the plan is.
Obviously, the floor is the biggest problem. So, I mean, they do have some weapons, but the floor is the biggest problem. The guards are, obviously, they outnumber the guards by a lot, but I would agree. Yeah, that's my biggest question. How the hell are they going to get out?
I'm also wondering where the Mon Mothma plot is going to go in the next 2 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm wondering, I don't know, I think we're running out of time for there to be like I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I'm wondering if there's like a big, decisive thing with her. But I mean, damn, her scenes are just so compelling. I love every time she pops up on screen, man. Mm-hmm. I'm just hoping, I'm hoping for more of a decisive action from her, because she's been very, very, very safe, I'd say, throughout this entire season. So I want to see have her a big moment with her, but I'm worried we're not gonna have enough time in this season. I'm hoping it'll pay off.
We're also seeing a lot of her in her disguise,
Yeah.
And when she has to get out of her disguise, she's still trying to keep the appearance of her disguise. It's not like Vel, who could just openly do something around Luthen when they're off planet. She can't leave Coruscant. She could barely leave her house, but she can't leave Coruscant. So it's very difficult for her to actually do what she wants to do. And I would say be herself, because she's an act. It's all an act. It's a facade.
Yep. Any more questions you got?
No, I would say my final thoughts are, I would assume the prison break is going to be up next. I would assume they're at least going to attempt it, or they're going to start really planning it. I want to know what's up. And yeah, final thoughts is I think this episode, this arc, this anime arc is great. The prison arc has been really fun so far. Very distinctual.
I do like how this show is different, concise, self-contained stories. You could replace Andor with another character, honestly.
Yeah.
For each of these arcs, and it would still be a self-contained story. That's what I think that's what's very cool about this show.
That's what's cool too, is like, I feel like it's been 3 episodes with 1 to 2 of an in-between, and then another like 3-ish episodes. So that's what it's feeling like. And honestly, it's weird. It feels like this show has been on TV for a while now. Like, in my mind, it feels like I've always been watching Andor, and I'm having fun. Well, it's just cool.
And I actually have a theory on why that is. It's honestly because of the talent they have in front of the camera.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at it, they have emptied the fucking They've emptied the cabinet of British actors to play characters on the show.
Yeah.
Great example, the fucking medic. He played James Potter in the Harry Potter franchise.
Yep.
That's Harry's dad. And that's that's a big actor for a minor character. Like, that's really cool.
I mean, Marva, that's Harry Potter's aunt.
Yeah. So, like, they're literally, like, they're grabbing they're just putting such awesome, I would say, underutilized talent in every freaking spot that they can find. And it's so cool to see how effective they are at delivering. This is a drama. This is not a space opera. This is a drama, and that's what these actors are excelling at.
And I'm having a lot of fun also watching each individual scene. Like, each individual scene feels isolated as like a small short. I just think the writing is really good, and the film, like, cinematography and effects, and just overall great job. The direction is good. Also, like you said earlier, the first scene, the interrogation scene with Bix, like, that was amazing. That was one of the best scenes in the entire episode.
I would argue if they're not listening. Do you think anyone's listening out there? But if I was the Andor production crew, this is the episode that I would submit for Emmy consideration.
Oh yeah,
because of that scene and Kino's arc throughout this episode. Because the development that he has as a man who loses all hope at the very end is amazing.
Also, Karn is a freak. I'm going to add that too. He's terrifying and he worries me. I feel bad for him in his upbringing. That's about the only thing I feel bad for. Dude needs to chill. He clearly has a psychosis issue.
He's got some mommy issues. He's got mommy issues, which is why he finds Daedra so appealing.
He's got a lot of issues. I think he's attracted to authority because he was raised by authority almost.
Ooh, there you go. Way to use that psych degree.
I wish I had a psych degree. I'd probably make more money. No, he definitely is attracted to a specific thing. If you look at the ISB, they are almost like the authority, right? And so he is attracted to that rather than, like, obviously her in the ISB, but I kind of feel like he wants to work for them as well.
Yeah, he definitely does. He tried, auditioned. Because,
there you go. Because then he can be the authority figure. He doesn't have to follow it anymore. He makes the rules. He enforces them.
He'll have the power. He sees Daedra as the physical manifestation of that power.
Yeah, and I think that's why he was a security guard in the first place.
I mean, we could talk about this all day, but I think that we should end it there. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at lore_party. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.